This is a university accommodation complex housing over 400 students in Hobart CBD. 12 months after its opening, Hobart has found itself enveloped in a housing crisis.
Rental vacancy rates are at an all-time low. Housing prices are soaring and university accommodation complexes are full. Students are being told that in Hobart there is no vacancy. This is a special report from Monte, Bovill and Bethany Green. Hobart, the capital city of Tasmania, known for its picturesque setting, emerging art scene and stunning landscapes, has experienced a rise in popularity both nationally and internationally. Over the past 18 months, approximately 3,500 people have moved to the Greater Hobart region. While this increased popularity has been welcomed by many as ushering better economic prospects, it has come with consequences.
Between 2016 and 2017, the rental vacancy rate for the Greater Hobart region has dropped from 2.5% to 0.3%, a historic low. In the year leading up to 2018, rental prices increased by 16.5%, and whole houses listed as short stay options have reached just under 900. This is coupled with significant growth in students studying at the University of Tasmania and a growing population in Hobart.
Housing researchers regard a rental vacancy rate of under 1% as being a market failure, and it basically means that there aren't enough houses to go around. So you have a situation where you have literally dozens of people applying for every single rental property that's available, people bidding well over the asking price, and it's just obvious that unless there's increased supply, there are going to be people who miss out.
Professor Richard Eccleston, Director of the Institute for the Study of Social Change at UTAS, attributes the housing shortage to a number of factors.
Population growth, and that includes growing numbers of students moving to Hobart from regional Tasmania, from interstate and overseas. And that's clearly part of what's going on. We've probably got 400 or 500 houses going out of the rental market and into holiday accommodation. And then just when we need more homes, fewer are being built. So that's the reason why we've got probably 1,000 or 1,500 home deficit in Greater Hobart at the moment.
These factors have converged to produce a housing crisis, particularly affecting the most vulnerable in our community.
I think young people are particularly vulnerable in this housing situation, and when you look at the statistics that come in every time the census is done, there's a notional number of how many people don't have a home, a secure home, and that number will underplay the impact on young people because young people will often do things like go and crash at a friend's house for a night or 2 or 3 weeks. There's an underreporting of youth homelessness. It's particularly, I think, impacting on people in the sort of 18 to 25-year-old cohort. It's really hard for them to get a rental, bordering on impossible. And that requires us to think really deeply and invest in housing solutions like Trinity Hill, for example, shared models of housing, because if young people can't find a home, they're not going to finish their degree and it will impact on their entire life's journey.
Tasmania's politicians are unified in their concern for students and young people in the face of this housing crisis.
We know there are significant pressures on young people. We know there's significant pressures on young people studying. And that can also affect their study too if they're couch surfing or in overcrowded accommodation. And I don't think that's fair. I think there's a collective responsibility here from Tasmanians, from the Tasmanian government, but also UTAS to have a duty of care of their students. We're in good economic times. We should be able to afford to house all Tasmanians. They deserve that basic fundamental right of safe, secure and affordable housing.
For a number of UTAS students, living rurally is a serious challenge. Campuses, facilities and extracurricular activities are often difficult to access, with some spending several hours a day travelling to and from university. Rochelle Evans, a first-year Bachelor of Psychological Science student from Huonville, spends 2 hours a day in a car travelling to and from university. As a result, she has been forced to reduce the number of days she attends classes on campus.
I started off 4 days a week because I had a class on all of those days, but I've now limited it to just 2 because they're the days I have my tutorial, so it's compulsory for me to go. Otherwise, I just do my lectures online because the travel is too much to come more regularly.
At the peak of Hobart's housing shortage, Rochelle attempted to find accommodation closer to the CBD, with no success.
I tried to look for housing earlier this year. I went to one inspection and there were so many people at this one inspection, and I just thought, oh my goodness, I'm a student, all these other people are families, that of course they're going to favour the families over myself.
Rochelle's experience is one many students can relate to. Unable to find a place, many students have been forced into unsatisfactory options: couch surfing, sleeping in cars, sleeping on campus, or staying in their friends' accommodation, which in some cases is prohibited, for a long period of time. One student, using the alias Edward to protect his identity, shared his experience.
It was hard for someone like me who didn't have any experience about living overseas to imagine how life would be like, Until I came here, then I just realized it wasn't an easy thing at all.
Edward is an international student at UTAS. He has now been without a permanent home for 6 months.
I know it's not allowed here, but right now I'm temporarily staying in my friend's room, which is totally not allowed here. But of course I'm scared that if I get caught, because penalty, or they might even chase you out. Imagine that as the weather gets worse and you don't have a good place to stay, and you are suffering alone, things like that. So I would say that it's a very important issue. We are human beings, so no matter what, we need a place to stay.
Student experiences like Edward's have been acknowledged by the University of Tasmania. Recently, Vice-Chancellor Professor Rufus Black estimated that 200 students are living in arrangements the university classifies as substandard. It is understood that all university accommodation complexes in Hobart are full, with substantial waiting lists.
What's been very, very welcome from my perspective and our government's perspective is that the university has seen that it is part of this situation we find ourselves in Hobart and in Tasmania, and it's prepared to be part of the solution.
The university has announced its plans to build a new 430-bed accommodation complex adjacent to the existing Melville Street apartments in Hobart CBD. Construction on this project will commence at the end of 2018, and according to the VC, will be completed by the end of 2020 at the latest.
That's going to be really significant because it's going to provide purpose-built accommodation for students in the right place, the right type of accommodation. That will put less pressure then on the rest of the general housing and accommodation stock in Hobart, and it will start to reduce that pressure.
In the interim, the university has purchased Mid-City Hotel in Hobart CBD and will have an additional 140 beds available for students in semester 2 this year.
So I think the university has openly acknowledged that it's part of the problem, and for that reason is really fast-tracking the development of new student accommodation. We're looking at repurposing other buildings, so in the very short term, 3 to 6 months, we can significantly increase the amount of accommodation. There are commercial negotiations that are still ongoing. However, what the university and the Vice-Chancellor recognises is that there are acute pressures, housing pressures in Hobart now, and they're particularly affecting many of our students.
There is no easy fix to Hobart's housing crisis, and it will continue to be a significant issue for some time to come. Work is being done to address the problem, but only time will tell if it will be enough.
My commitment is that we'll do everything we can to ensure that Tasmanians have a roof over their head and a safe place to sleep. So we're trying to make better use of the houses we've already got, as well as stimulate the supply of more houses in the medium to longer term, and to plan for the future so that we are ready for the next waves of growth that Tasmania experiences as we continue to be a successful growing economy, to ensure that we see the next pressure points coming in our housing system and that we're planning and investing ahead of the demand so that we don't find ourselves in a housing shortage situation again in the future.
I think there's an understanding of the magnitude of the problem, and it's not going to go away overnight, that it really does need a serious and strategic response that's going to take time. And I think it's going to be a really central discussion and debate for the government and for our broader community over the next 3 or 4 years.
Housing is the issue of millennials and the younger generation. It will be the issue of our lifetime.
We know what the challenge is. We know what a number of the solutions are. We need to just crack on with it and get the politics out of it and work together to deliver more housing.
Each of the main stakeholders have given their commitment to finding a solution. However, until this crisis is resolved, students will remain in a housing limbo.